Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, I need to tell you guys about the fact that Dragapult is taking over. Dragapult isn't a little bit good. Dragapult isn't quite nice. Dragapult is completely and utterly taking over the Pokemon TCG. Here is a snapshot from limitlesstcg.com showing some of the city leagues, the medium-sized tournaments happening around Japan this past weekend. Look how many of them are Dragapult. I don't have exact numbers of every single city league, but I'm telling you right now, Dragapult is absolutely taken over. Like I told you, Dragapult had a lot of potential, but it was a stage 2, so we'd have to kind of wait and see exactly how good it ended up being. We're there. There's no wait and see anymore. Dragapult is the best deck in the Pokemon TCG, but the problem is, I feel like saying Dragapult is the best deck in the Pokemon TCG doesn't really do it justice. It is the runaway, hands down, no question, best deck in the Pokemon TCG. Now, in terms of format right now, Japan have just got Mask of Change, which essentially means they've now got Twilight Masquerade. Them getting Mask of Change basically means they have completed all of the sets that we are going to end up having in Mask of Change. That is essentially where they are. So they are playing in the format now that we are going to have when we hit North American Internationals. That is the format they are currently playing in, and I thought Palafin was going to be good, and I've still got faith in Palafin, but I'm telling you right now, I'm paying a lot of attention to what's happening over in Japan right now, and there's no question Dragapult is the best. You know how Dragapult gets one of the booster packs in Twilight Masquerade? There's a very good reason for it. So what does it do? Why is it so good? And how is it played? And how is it played is an interesting question, because right now there is no real consensus, at least looking at results, for the best way to play this card. Now, Dragapult as a whole, there's a lot going for it. It's a stage 2, but don't worry, we can get around that. 320 HP, but it's a dragon Pokemon, so no weakness. Single energy 70 is fine. You'll get evolving and support Pokemon, but really it's 2 energy, 200 damage, and you get to place 6 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon in any way you like. Oh, yeah, that adds up pretty gosh darn quickly. Now, 60 is actually not the ideal number. It is 70. That's what you need to get most evolving or support Pokemon. But some lists are choosing to play the Hawlucha from Scarlet and Violet, which drops 1 damage counter on each of 2 bench Pokemon, which will then put them up to 70, which is quite fun. And then we also see some decks playing TM Devolution, essentially for the same reason, so that you can then devolve your opponent's Pokemon down to their basic 70 HP form, and you've just so happened to put 70 damage on them. Yeah. 200 isn't quite enough. 60 isn't quite enough. Really, 230 is what you need to be doing to get basic EXs in Pokemon V, and 70 is what you need to be doing to take out Pokemon on the bench. But you've got stuff like Hawlucha and Devolution to go after those little Pokemon, and sure, 200 isn't quite enough, but you know what? Because you're also dropping 6 damage counters on the bench constantly, it'll work out pretty gosh darn nicely. But it's not just Dragapult, it's also Dracloak. Dracloak's got a redonkulous ability that says once during your turn you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck, one goes to your hand, and the other one goes to the bottom of your deck. It's not quite in line with Kirlia and Gardevoir decks. It is not quite as good as Kirlia, but it's not a million miles away, and it's the exact same kind of thing here. Stage 2s, and we've seen this for years and years and years and years, Stage 2s in the Pokemon TCG are a bazillion times better if you've got a Stage 1 that has a draw engine. You give me a stage 1 of a draw engine, and now all of a sudden your stage 2 is so much better than it was before. That is one of the reasons this is so gosh darn good. And make no mistake about it, these are Dracloak decks. There are different engines, different ways we get them rolling, etc. But in terms of what we're doing, we are evolving up into Dragapult, and we are attacking with Dragapult. It is a full-on Dragapult deck. But how do we get there? There are a few different ways people are building this deck. I think the best is Xatu. We'll wait to see if that's actually true, but I like the Xatu build. It came around in Pade and Face. This is a card that I told you was ridiculous immediately, unlike Dragapult, sorry about that. And it's just taken a while for this to be amazing, but it is amazing now. The ability lets you attach a basic Psychic from your hand to one of your bench Pokemon, and if you do, you draw 2 cards. But it's any bench Pokemon, it doesn't have to be Psychic, and this means that you firstly have a draw engine, which is great, because now you've got your Dracloak and your Xatu, you are actually getting a lot of extra cards. And secondly, look at Dragapult's attack cost. 1 fire, 1 Psychic. If you've got Xatu out, this is essentially a single energy attack. I mean, it's not, it's a 2 energy attack, but you can get them both on in 1 turn. You use your fire as your attachment for the turn, you attach with Xatu, and then you got both energy on and you're drawing 2 cards. And that is one of the things we see with this Dracloak deck. No, it doesn't hit perfect numbers, but because you're getting, you're getting 260 damage total on the board, and you are consistent. It is a stage 2 deck with a lot of consistency options. How else are we seeing it built? Well, Pidgeot is a popular build. By the way, these aren't always exclusive, so a bunch of Pidgeot builds will also play Xatu as well. I've seen, there's just a whole bunch of different builds out there. Like I say, the week 1 of City Leagues, the set has just come out in Japan. Like, it literally came out this weekend. We are not there in terms of figuring out the best way to play it. But Pidgeot, of course, we've see a lot of play since Obsidian Flames. Lets you once during your turn search for any card. And the theory is that searching for that one card will get your Dragapult out. And once you've got Dragapult out, 320 HP, no weakness, big attacks, you see where we're going with this. The new Tatsugiri, and I've got to show you the illustration rare here because that's the only English print we've actually got at the moment. The new Tatsugiri's got the ability to attract customers. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you can look at the top 6 cards of your deck and grab a supporter card. So that is one option we've got here. Go and do that. And I've even seen it played with Armor Rouge. Now, the theory with Armor Rouge essentially is that you've got stuff like Magma Basin that will get fire energy on the board, and then Armor Rouge has got an ability that moves the energy to the active, which allows you to move that fire energy around, and it gets that second energy on there quite easy. And also does give you a decent single, not a good single prize attacker, but free energy 90 plus burn. It's not absolute garbage, so it gives you something to attack about. I'm not pretending it's a phenomenal attacker, but I am pretending that there is an option here. But it seems to be Xatu, Pidgeot, Tatsugiri. They seem to be the kind of main ways that this deck is being played at the moment. But like I've said, I do think this needs to be stressed. We are week 1. We are not there yet. We do not know what the best way to build it is. I think it's Xatu. I mean, there's one build that you can see on the list I showed you earlier, which is literally just a Squawkabilly build. So the theory is that you're just using Squawkabilly in the early game to aggressively draw cards and set up. But again, you can use Squawkabilly here, even if you're playing the Xatu build or the Pidgeot build. So it's not something that needs to be exclusive. Also, just as a side note here, Buddy Buddy Poffin works with this deck. This deck is great proof that Buddy Buddy Poffin is... It might not be a perfect replacement for Battle VIP Pass, and it's not, let's be clear. But for a lot of decks, it is going to be enough. Perfect? Nah, mate. Enough? Yes. Buddy Buddy Poffin is a big deal, and it is proving it. Decks like this are going to make a big, big difference. Although while we're here, rather than Squawkabilly, what a lot of decks are choosing to play is Rotom V. Rotom V has become very popular in this deck, draws 3 cards and then ends your turn. But the theory here is it doesn't really matter because you draw extra cards and then you go into your second turn and hopefully you've got everything you need to get the Dragapult. And like I've said, this is a deck where essentially once you get Dragapult out, you're just rolling. You just sit there and you chill and you go. Yes, I know Dracloak is a great stage 1, but we generally do see rare candy played in this deck as well. Oftentimes it seems to be a 2 of. Again, cannot stress enough, we are early. But a lot of the winning lists I've been peeking this weekend are playing 2 copies of rare candy, because it's nice to have the option to go straight into Dragapult. But also Dracloak has an amazing ability, so generally going through Dracloak with the option of being able to drop a rare candy and get straight into your Dragapult, that's generally what we tend to see. And yes, these decks are playing 4 Dracloak. Not all of them. Some of them are rocking with 3, but 3 or 4 Dracloak is what you're going to see in the list here. I don't think I've seen a winning list that's only playing 2. Again, we are very, very early, but generally speaking, 4 Dracloak seems to be the standard, with some decks dropping it down to 3. Now, in terms of a spec, there doesn't seem to be much of a consensus here. Nominally, Scoop Up Cyclone seems to be the number 1 choice. The majority of the winning lists that I've been looking at seem to be playing this. I have not been able to collate all the data from all the city leagues yet, so again, take this with a pinch of salt. But this seems to be the top one at the moment. That's the one that just lets you pick up a Pokemon and all cards attached to it. And it's healing. You've got 320 HP, you've got no weakness, and because you're evolving up through your stage 1 most of the time, you're not as hurt by the fact that you're picking up your Pokemon. If you've got a Dracloak on the bench and a Dragapult in the active heavily damaged, you can use Dracloak's ability, pick up Dragapult, evolve the Dracloak you just used into a new Dragapult, and then off you go. When you're evolving stage 2 through all of the stages, picking them up with something like Scoop Up Cyclone actually works very, very nicely indeed. But I've seen a bunch of others. I've seen Hyper Aroma. It's the one that lets you search out your free stage 1s. Obviously, your stage 1 here has a phenomenal draw engine, so doesn't surprise me that people would be wanting to play that. Plus, like I've said, there are some stage 1s that you can use to support here. I've seen it played with Secret Box. That's the one that goes and searches out, well, basically everything you could ever need. Okay, fine, it's not everything you could ever need, but you get yourself an item card, a Pokemon tool, a supporter, and a stadium, all in one go when you discard 3 cards from your hand. That's pretty good. I've seen it played with Unfair Stamp. That's the one whereby if your opponent took a prize last turn, you can make both of you and your opponent shuffle your hand into your deck, and then you get a new 5-card hand and they get 2. And you're a setup deck, they're often going to take the first prize. So the theory is they take a prize, you punish them, and then you got your Dragapult up and rolling. And I've even seen it played with Neo Upper Energy. Now, I'm not saying this is the main one it's played with, but I absolutely am saying I have seen successful lists already of this deck played with Neo Upper Energy. Up till now, the hands down worst a spec. Basically, if it's attached to a stage 2, it's any 2 energy. So this is a literal single energy that will pay Dragapult's attack cost. I'm not sure you need it, but it is there as an option and some people are using it. I am not seeing Prime Catcher in this list, and that makes perfect sense. You need to get set up here, and you're dropping a lot of damage on the bench. You don't need Prime Catcher in this deck, it's not necessary. And as much as there is a lot of debate over A-Spec, there is no debate over Radiant Pokemon. It is Radiant Alakazam. Radiant Alakazam is your Radiant Pokemon of choice here. And this is one where you can look at the results and see it, but also it's obvious. Lets you move 2 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another. In a deck where you're dropping 6 damage counters, but you often really need 7. Radiant Alakazam is nuts in this deck. Lets you drop 6 damage counters, and then the next turn you move 2, drop 6, and then an 80 HP support or evolving Pokemon will be taken out. Yeah, Radiant Alakazam is broken in this deck. No issue whatsoever. That has to be the one. And the last card I need to shout out as being awesome in this deck is Mela. Mela is great in Dragapult. Usually only played as a one-off so far from the list that I'm seeing, but it is a very good card. If one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you attach a basic fire from your discard to one of your Pokemon and draw 2. You got 6 cards in your hand. Well, Dragapult attacks for a fire and a psychic. So you get your fire, attach psychic for the turn, and you're off and rolling, and you draw 2. You got 6 cards in your hand. Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's not always going to work, which is why you generally play it as a one-off, but it's brilliant. And then, of course, if you're playing like the Tatsugiri build or you're playing the Pidgeot build, you are going to be able to grab this on the turn you need it, even if you're only really playing it as a one-off. Make no mistake about it, Dragapult, and it's early, it is week 1 of the Twilight Masquerade meta. But it is hands down the best deck, and right now, and it's early, doesn't really seem close, frankly. And I have just gone and done a little bit of a sum here. Over on Limitless, they have recorded 28 City Leagues that happened this weekend. 16 of them were won by Dragapult. That's 57%. Won by Dragapult, week 1. This is not a drill, people. Dragapult is the best deck. If you're testing for North American Internationals, if you're attending that tournament, start testing Dragapult. Right, there we go. That's what you need to know. And now it's over to you guys. Tell me what you think about this. Tell me how excited you are for Dragapult. Tell me if you think it's overrated. Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel, like the lovely Martin Cornwall, who's been a supporter of ours literally since I started the podcast in 2012, and has been a very thoroughly lovely person to me, so shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.